The valley didn't look sick at first, and that was the strange thing. It was green enough to fool the eyes. The trees still lifted their arms towards the sky, and the river still moved like a silver ribbon through the centre of the land. Smoke still rose from neat chimneys, and washing still danced on lines between little stone houses. But Psycho stopped before the first field and lowered his head. Gypsy pressed herself against Maxi's leg, and Lucy sniffed the air once and refused to take another step forward. Maxi stood at the bridge above the valley and listened. Below them, dogs barked behind painted gates. A child coughed near a well. Somewhere, a woman called for someone to hurry. Somewhere else, a man shouted at a dog who had done nothing wrong except be afraid. The wind moved across the grass. No insects rose. No birds answered. Maxi looked down at her three companions. "Ah," she said softly. "So this is where the bodies have been trying to speak." Psycho gave a low rumble in his chest. Lucy sat down firmly as if to say, "Then listen properly." So Maxi did. They entered the valley at dusk. At the first house, a young dog scratched himself raw between a lemon tree that had no scent. At the second, an old woman carried a tray of white bread and sweet tea to a man whose hands trembled. At the third, a thin collie paced the fence until the dust beneath her paws was worn into a path. Everywhere the people looked busy. Everywhere the animals looked tired. In the centre of the village stood a bright building with glass doors and a golden sign that said, "The Hall of Quick Fixes." Its windows glowed blue, its shelves were full. Bottles stood in perfect rows, promising silence. Stop the itch, end the pain, quiet the fear, suppress the cough, control the body, make the dog behave, make the child sit still, make the old heart forget what is lost. Villagers streamed in and out, carrying little parcels wrapped in silver paper. Their faces were relieved for a moment, but then looked worried again. A woman with red-rimmed eyes hurried past Maxi, pulling a limping spaniel behind her. "He won't stop whining," she muttered. "There must be something wrong with him." Gypsy watched the spaniel with soft, aching eyes. "There is," Maxi whispered, "but not in the way she thinks." At the edge of the square stood a dry fountain. Its basin was cracked. In the center of it, carved from stone, was the shape of a great open flower. A boy sat on the rim, holding a small brown dog wrapped in a blanket. The dog's muzzle was white, his body was thin, but his eyes were deep and clear. Lucy moved first. She stepped away from Maxi and went to him, slowly, respectfully, as if approaching an elder. The boy looked up. "Don't touch him," he said. "Everybody says he's finished." Maxi crouched a little distance away. "What is his name?" "Bramble." At the sound of his name, the old dog's tail moved once beneath the blanket. Psycho came closer and stood beside Maxi, solid as a mountain. Gypsy lay down in front of Bramble and rested her chin on her paws. "What happened to him?" Maxi asked. The boy shrugged, but his face tightened. "He got old, then he got itchy, then he stopped eating properly, and then his legs hurt. Then he started crying at night." He swallowed. "They gave him so many things. Some helped for a little while, but he kept getting quieter." Maxi looked at Bramble, and Bramble looked back. In his eyes, she did not see defeat. She saw a message that had been sent too many times and was never opened. "Who used to care for the garden?" Maxi asked. The boy frowned. "What garden?" Maxi pointed to the stone flower in the fountain. The boy looked at it though he had passed it every day of his life and had never seen it. "There was a garden here once," he said slowly. "My grandmother told me. Before the hall came, before everybody got too busy." "What happened to it?" He looked towards the Hall of Quick Fixes. "They said it was old-fashioned." At that, Psycho turned away from the square and walked towards the far end of the village. He did not look back. Maxi rose. "When Psycho walks like that," she said, "we follow." The boy gathered Bramble in his arms. "Can we come?" Maxi looked at the old dog, then at Lucy, who had already decided. "Yes," she said, "but we will walk slowly." They followed Psycho through lanes where the houses grew older and the walls more cracked. The air smelled faintly of smoke, sugar, damp fur and fear. At last they reached a narrow path hidden behind a hedge of thorns. The thorns should have blocked the way, but as Maxi approached, one branch moved aside and then another. Beyond the hedge stood a white stone cottage, no larger than a prayer. Its doors was painted the color of bone, and above it hung a sign so faded Maxi could barely read it. It said, "The Salt House." The boy shifted Bramble in his arms. "No one comes here," he whispered. "Someone does," Maxi said. Inside the air was cool and still. Along one wall stood 12 small glass jars. Each jar held a different shimmer: moon white, river grey, rose gold, pale yellow, soft blue, and ash silver. The dust lay thick on the shelves, but the jars were not dead. They glowed faintly, like embers waiting for breath. Gypsy walked straight to the lowest shelf and lay down beneath it. Lucy sneezed at the dust, then poured at a jar with a label curled at the edges. Maxi lifted it up gently. Kalkphos. On the next shelf she saw Furphos, and beside it Kaliphos and Natmir, Silica and Magphos. Names small enough to be dismissed, names old enough to remember. A voice spoke from the corner. An old woman sat in a chair by the old heath. She was so still that Maxi had taken her for a shadow. Her hair was white, her eyes were bright, and around her neck hung a little pouch of linen. "It's built for messages," the old woman said, "and sometimes the messages cannot travel because the smallest builders have been forgotten." Maxi bowed her head slightly. "The 12 little builders," she said. The old woman smiled. "So, someone remembers?" "Not enough," Maxi replied. The old woman looked at Bramble. "Ah," she said, "this one has carried more than his own years." The boy tightened his arms around the dog. "He's not just old?" "Old is not a sickness," the woman said. "It is a season. But even a season needs nourishment." She rose slowly and moved to the shelves, touching each jar without taking any down. "People come to the body as if it is a disobedient servant," she said. "They say, 'Stop aching, stop itching, stop trembling, stop crying.' But the body is a messenger. Silence the messenger, and the message goes deeper." Bramble gave a soft sigh. The old woman opened a linen pouch and took out a pinch of something that looked like pale dust and starlight mixed together. She did not hand it to the boy. She placed it in Maxi's palm. "Not as a cure," she said, "but as a reminder." Maxi nodded, and the boy watched, confused. "What does it do?" The old woman looked at him kindly. "It asks the body whether it still remembers how to repair." That was all. No promise, no command, only a question. When they left the salt house, the moon had risen, but the valley was not dark. A soft green glow pulsed beyond the old cottage, deeper along that hidden path. This time Gypsy led. The path wound between stones and roots until it opened into a garden enclosed by broken walls, and for a moment Maxi could not breathe. The garden was wild, but not dead. Nettle stood at the back like a stern grandmother. Calendula glowed along the path like small suns. Chamomile bowed her golden head in the moonlight. Roseberry lifted sharp green fingers into the wind. Yarrow stood upright, pale and watchful, like a soldier who had seen too much blood and still believed in healing. There were roses too, old and fragrant, their petals bruised but still brave. The boy stared. I thought it was gone." "No," Maxi said, "only unheard." Lucy stepped into the garden and immediately became very busy sniffing everything. Psycho stood at the gate, guarding. Gypsy went to the roses and pressed her nose against one faded bloom. And then the garden spoke. Not in words, but in scent. Chamomile released the memory of a child finally sleeping. Nettle released the strength of blood, remembering itself. Calendula released the warmth of skin closing after being hurt. Rosemary released a clean, sharp breath through fog. And yarrow released courage. Rose released grief without bitterness. The boy began to cry. At first he wiped his face angrily, but then he stopped trying. Bramble lifted his head and licked the boy's wrist. "I miss my mother," the boy whispered. The garden listened. The dogs listened. Maxi listened. Nothing rushed to fix him. The moon moved slowly overhead. At last the boy said, "After she died, Bramble started sleeping outside my door. Then he stopped playing, and then I stopped going outside. Then Father started working all the time, and then the house got quiet." Gypsy pressed her body gently against his leg. "Dogs hear what we do not say," Maxi said, "and sometimes they carry what has nowhere else to go." The boy looked down at Bramble. "I made him sick?" "No," Maxi said firmly. "Love does not make sickness, but grief that has no river can flood a house, and dogs will stand in the water with us." The boy buried his face in Bramble's fur. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. Bramble's tail moved once and then again. From the far side of the garden came the sound of water. Psycho raised his head. The old woman from the salt house stood at the gate. "The spring," she said. "He has found the way." Beneath a curtain of ivy, hidden behind the green library, stone steps led down into the earth. The air grew cooler as they descended. The walls glistened with mineral tears. At the bottom was a small round chamber, and in the center of it, a pool no wider than a shield. The water was perfectly still. Above it, roots hung through cracks in the ceiling like the fingers of ancient trees. "This is the well of the small drop," the old woman said. The boy frowned. "It's just water," Lucy snorted and Maxi smiled. "Nothing is just anything." The old woman knelt beside the pool. "Some remedies arrive like thunder," she said. "Others arrive like a memory so small the mind dismisses it, but the body turns towards it like a flower towards morning." Maxi looked into the water, and for a moment she saw nothing, but then the surface shifted. She saw the valley as it had been, children running barefoot through herb beds, dogs sleeping in doorways, women hanging plants to dry beneath the eaves, men laughing at the well, elders placing tiny white tablets on tongues, drops into water, warm broths in bowls, hands on hearts, hands in soil. But then the image changed. The garden was now paved. The fountain was now dried up. The hall of quick fixes rose bright and proud. The people became faster. Their food became whiter. The water became flatter, and their sleep became thinner. The dogs became itchier, louder, and sadder. The children forgot the names of plants. The adults forgot the names of feelings, and the bodies began to speak louder. The old woman dipped a glass rod into the pool and lifted one drop. It trembled at the tip, holding the moon. She touched it to Bramble's tongue. The old dog closed his eyes. No lightning came. There was no miracle music. No sudden youth returned to his bones. But he breathed in, deeply, as if he had been waiting a long time for permission. The whole chamber seemed to exhale with him. Far above, something cracked. The boy startled. What was that? The fountain, Maxi said. They climbed back towards the village as dawn began to pale the sky. At the square, people had gathered around the dry fountain. A thin stream of water trickled from the stone flower. Not enough to impress anyone who loved spectacle, but enough to wet the basin, and enough to catch the first light. Enough for Lucy to splash both front paws into it and looked very pleased with herself. The villagers murmured. The woman with the limping spaniel came forward. "What did you do?" Maxi looked at her and then at the crowd. We listened. A man from the Hall of Quick Fixes stepped onto the square. His coat was white, his shoes were clean, and his smile never touched his eyes. "These are old superstitions," he said. "People need proper solutions, fast solutions, modern solutions." Psycho moved to Maxi's side. He did not growl, he did not need to. Maxi met the man's eyes. "A true solution does not fear questions," she said. The square grew quiet. She turned towards the villagers. "I am not here to take away what is useful. I am not here to tell you that pain must be endured or that help should be refused. But I am here to say this. When you silence every symptom without asking why it came, you bury the message alive." The fountain trickled behind her. "Your dogs are not betraying you when they itch, limp, bark, refuse food, tremble or hide. Your bodies are not failing you when you ache, burn, cough, grieve, swell or tire. They are speaking." The boy stepped forward with Bramble in his arms. "He was carrying our sadness," he said. The woman with the spaniel began to cry. "My house has smelt of bleach for years," she whispered. "He started coughing after I scrubbed everything twice a day." Another villager said, "My dog stopped eating when I changed his food." Another said, "My child has not slept since her father left." Someone else said nothing, but looked towards the old garden path. Maxi nodded. "Then begin there." The man in the white coat laughed sharply. "With feelings, with plants, with little salt and water drops." The old woman from the salt house stepped beside Maxi. "With humility," she said, and that silenced him more than anger could have. Over the days that followed, the valley did not transform all at once. Real healing seldom performs for an audience, but small things began. A woman opened her windows instead of spraying the air. A man learned to make broth instead of throwing bones away. Children carried buckets to the Green Library and learned the names of chamomile, nettle, calendula, rosemary, yarrow, and rose. The old fountain was cleaned. The Hall of Quick Fixes remained, but its golden sign no longer looked like the sun. People still went there sometimes, but they also went to the salt house. They sat with the old woman and learned about the 12 little builders, those tiny mineral keys with quiet names. They went to the Green Library and learned that herbs were not decorations, but elders. They went to the well of the small drop and learned that not all strength was loud, and they sat with their dogs, really sat, without phones, without shouting, without assuming that obedience was the same as peace. Bramble did not become young. That was not the gift. His legs still moved slowly, and his muzzle remained white, and some mornings were easier than others. But he began to eat warm food from the boy's hand. He slept in patches of sun. He wagged his tail when Lucy visited, though she was far too energetic and often had to be reminded that elders are not climbing frames. Gypsy spent some long hours beside the grieving children. Psycho guarded the garden gate as though he had been born for it, and Maxi walked through the village, listening to the slow return of life. One evening, as the sun poured honey over their rooftops, the boy found her beside the fountain. The water now flowed clear, not strongly, but steadily. "Are you leaving?" he asked. Maxi looked towards the ridge where the path waited. "Soon," she said. He nodded, trying very hard to be brave. "Will the garden keep speaking?" Maxi smiled. "It never stopped." He frowned. "But you said—" "I said the people stopped hearing." The boy looked down at Bramble, who was leaning against his leg. "How do we keep on hearing?" Maxi knelt and placed one hand on the old dog's head. "Do not wait until the body shouts. Listen when it whispers." The boy repeated it quietly, as though storing it somewhere safe. Maxi stood up. Psycho was already at the road, and Gypsy looked back at the children by the garden gate. Lucy stole one last drink from the fountain and shook water over everyone. For the first time since Maxi had arrived, the square filled with laughter. Not the brittle laughter people used to cover pain. Real laughter. Messy, surprised, alive. As Maxi and the dogs climbed the ridge, the valley below began to change in the evening light. The trees seemed greener now, but perhaps they had always been green. The river sounded brighter, but perhaps it had always been singing. From the green library rose the scent of rosemary and rose, and from the salt house came the soft glow of 12 little jars. From beneath the earth, the well of the small drop held the memory of all that had been forgotten and all that could still return. At the top of the ridge, Maxi paused. The boy waved with one hand, and Bramble lifted his head, and for one clear moment, every dog in the valley stopped barking. Not because they had been silenced, but because they have been heard. Maxi placed a hand over her heart, and she turned towards the next road. Behind her, the garden spoke in scent, water, mineral, memory, and leaf. Ahead of her, the world waited with all its aches and all its messages. Lucy trotted first, bright as a question, and Gypsy followed, soft as an answer. Psycho walked last, ancient and steady, making sure nothing precious was left behind. And Maxi smiled, for she knew that the valley had remembered. A body does not whisper forever. First it nudges, then it aches, then it burns, itches, limps, coughs, trembles, refuses, and even collapses. Not because it hates us, but because it has been trying to bring us home.